Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about the BBC series Ludwig, created and written by Mark Brotherhood and directed by Robert McKillop and Jill Robertson. So this is a crime drama, a detective series, which seems to be very, very, very popular on British TV. Maybe that's a function of what British TV I have available to me through like my BritBox subscription and Amazon Prime and Tubi and things like that. But it does seem that crime dramas make up a disproportionate amount of British television output. Give me your theories below in the comments if you want to on why that might be. But this is a crime drama, a detective drama based on a gimmick. And as with all detective stories, series is based on gimmicks, we have to have a certain willing suspension of disbelief in order to accept the fundamental premise, which is that John Taylor, who is a reclusive puzzle setter, probably on the autism spectrum, quite possibly OCD, somewhat agoraphobic, though that comes up, that really seems to show up in the first bit of the first episode and then largely get dropped. So this guy, John Taylor, played by David Mitchell. I mean, if you can believe that. They cast David Mitchell to play an awkward, uncomfortable, very smart person. I mean, David Mitchell, who wrote a book about medieval English monarchs, they thought that was the guy to play an awkward, uncomfortable, antisocial, smart person. I mean, but so John Taylor gets a call from his sister-in-law, Lucy. His brother, James Taylor, who is identical to him and also played by David Mitchell, has gone missing. Now, whereas John, who as a puzzle setter goes by the pen name Ludwig, whereas he is an awkward, uncomfortable, antisocial person, James is a detective chief inspector. So he is not just in the police, but he's the head of a unit of police, right? So, I mean, he clearly has a job that requires him to go out and to engage in these very sort of uncomfortable situations with murder victims and things like this. And Lucy's plan is to have John come to Cambridge from wherever it is that he lives. It's not specified, and it doesn't really matter, because the vast majority of the show takes place in Cambridge. So he comes to Cambridge, and basically he is supposed to impersonate James for one day, to go into James's office, find James's notebook, and then come back out so that they can use his notebook to try and figure out what has happened to James. That's the plan. Instead, John, in the guise of James, with the people that he works with every day, who are police officers, trained investigators, he is taken against his will to a crime scene. He panics and freaks out, goes down to the car, calls Lucy. He's basically like, I can't do this. This is insane. I need to go back to my house and basically just be in isolation again. And then he's looking, as he's having this conversation, he's looking at the police notes that he has taken with him. And he realizes that he can solve the crime if he puts it into the framework of a puzzle. And so because he's a puzzles genius, he is able to solve this series of crimes over the 6 episodes of the series. Basically just by basically what he does is he figures out which is the right puzzle framework to think about the crime through, and then he applies his knowledge of puzzles in order to solve that puzzle. It's a cool premise. It's an interesting premise as a crime show, right? Like, there's something very cerebral about it, which is a very pleasant fantasy. Sort of imagine that police are smart and they are taking informed, critical, careful consideration of various factors, and they are intellectualizing them and thinking carefully about them, which of course in reality is not how the vast majority of police work works, but there you go, it is what it is. But as John is solving these crimes in the guise of his brother, he and Lucy, and later her son Henry, are also investigating what has happened to James, and they're pulling together these bits and pieces, these clues, trying to sort of figure out how things fit together, etc., etc. And there does seem to be some kind of fairly high-level conspiracy going on. Now, this is improbable, to say the least. And in fact, that actually does get addressed in the series, how improbable it is that John Taylor, with no police training and seemingly no understanding of how police function, I mean, not even just at the level of, like, because he is not a trained police officer, he doesn't know police procedures. Like, he doesn't seem to have even the broadest general idea that, say, somebody who has watched a number of procedural police dramas might have. He seems to have no clue how to do this, but he is a brilliant puzzles person, and so he is able to solve these crimes. And no one that James Taylor has worked with seems to recognize that this is not James Taylor, that this person doesn't know the things that James Taylor knows, doesn't function as a police officer in the way that James Taylor functions, talks differently, thinks differently, builds cases, investigates crimes differently than James Taylor does. To a certain extent, we can excuse this with D.I. Russell Carter, who is Taylor's sort of second in command, because he has only been in the team for like 2 weeks or something like this. So, okay, cool, whatever. They don't know each other that well. James Taylor didn't necessarily trust him, didn't sort of take him into his confidence, whatever it is. Cool. Okay, I accept that. D.S. Alice Finch and D.C. Simon Evans, they seem to have been on the team much longer. And D.C.S. Carol Shaw, who is Taylor's boss, she seems to have known Taylor for quite a long time and to have protected him in a previous situation. So it seems unlikely that if you have worked with a person for a long period of time and suddenly they start exhibiting unusual or uncharacteristic behaviors, they don't know things that they clearly should know, they know things that you have never heard them talk about, etc., etc., those all seem like red flags. But for the most part, the show sort of ignores that. The show sort of lets this play out. We as viewers accept this conceit to the extent that we're enjoying the story, the crime drama, the mysteries of who did these murders, how and why, and how John/James is going to solve them. But also because we have the larger macro investigation of what has happened to James, what is the nature of the conspiracy, assuming that there is one, etc., etc. And so in order to get answers to those questions, and this is a thing that is not just true of Ludwig, but it functions, I think Ludwig is aware as a show of how this functions. Because we want answers to these questions, we are willing to, in the theater we would call it, willingly suspend our disbelief, right? We are willing to go along with a conceit that does not actually make that much sense. Like, in reality, this would not work the way that it works here, but because we want to get to the bottom of things, we are willing to accept it and to play along with it. And as long as you are willing to accept it and play along with it, I think the show is actually quite fun. Though, in fairness, I also really, really like David Mitchell, so that may also be shaping my positive view of it. But I do think it's genuinely a properly clever police procedural show that does some interesting things and takes an interesting spin on the genre. Whether or not the forthcoming season 2 will continue to be as effective is maybe an open question.